Here's the bottom line for us this morning. We all want good relationships. We want good relationships with our spouse. We want good relationships with our parents. We want good relationships with our friends and our family. We all want good relationships, right? We're designed for relationships. In fact, God created us to love one another and to be in relationship. You know, whether you're an Adam and Eve person, right? Genesis, God created Adam. He took dirt and formed it and breathed into him the breath of life and created the whole universe with a word on different days, 7 days, 6 days, and rested the seventh day. And then because Adam needed a helpmate, he created Eve from Adam. And you have that beautiful story of the one flesh becoming two, only to become one, but in two different, it's just this incredible image of God's relationship with us and the intimacy. Whether you're a hardcore Genesis person or you're more of a sciencey person who sees this evolution thing going on, and I'm not a person who sees a separation. I believe God created everything, and science is just trying to figure it all out. Science is trying to figure out the mind of God. So we struggle with that. You ever bake chocolate chip cookies? I love chocolate chip cookies. If you ever look at a chocolate chip cookie, or give it to your kid, right, and say, well, how did this become a chocolate chip cookie? How did the chocolate get there, and how hot did you have to cook it? And trying to dissect that from the end is really hard without the recipe. Well, that's kind of what we're trying to do with science. We're trying to dissect this amazing thing that God created without knowing the recipe. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. If you're an evolution person, you got to appreciate the whole concept of everything is multiplying and growing and evolving, right? Because the more you have, the more love can be shown. The more people you have, the more love you can show, the more relationships you can have. God said to Adam and Eve, go and multiply, and they had children, and on and on and on it goes. But you know what? From the very beginning, there was problems with relationship. I love the Bible. The Bible's amazing. It shows the relationships that we have with one another and how we should have them and how they break and how we fix them. And it's amazing. And it includes primarily the relationship with God, but we're going to get to that in a minute. In the beginning, you have Adam and Eve. And what happens? They have a relationship problem. Did you know that? They could have everything except one tree, right? God said that's not a good tree to have. And the serpent comes, you know the story. The serpent comes along and Eve's hanging out, and the serpent says, hey, look at that. Oh, I don't want that. God said not to eat that. And the serpent says, oh, well, what did God really say? Why don't you try it? It's really good. And Eve says, okay, I'll try it. And then she eats it. And then she goes to Adam and she goes, hey, Adam, I ate this. This was really good. You should try it. And Adam says, okay, sure. He eats it, right? And God told him not to eat that fruit. So then God comes along and God says, well, what did you do? And you remember the story? What happened? Where's the relationship problem? You ready? Adam, what did you do? Nothing. She made me do it. Eve, what did you do? Nothing. The serpent made me. They're blaming from the beginning, right? What is one of the most critical pieces of any relationship? Do you know what it is? Well, it's huge. If you're married, come on, you know it. Because you screw it up all the time. I don't want to imply that you screw up your marriage, but we do. Own your stuff. Adam, own your stuff. You ate it. Don't blame Eve. Eve, own your stuff, right? You want a healthy relationship. You want a healthy marriage. Own your stuff, right? But that's just a bonus for you this morning. That's not here and there. So you have Adam and Eve. They kind of screw up their relationship a little bit. They're blaming everybody, blaming each other. Then they have two kids, right? You know the story of Cain and Abel? Great story about brotherly love. Do you know what happens? Cain kills Abel because he's jealous. Why is he jealous? Because God liked his offering better. Then they have a bunch of kids, and then you get to Abraham. Abraham is the holy father of all of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam combined. He's the father of our faith. But do you know how he became Abraham? You know what his first name was? He went through a name change. It was so radical. His name was Abram. And you know why he became the father of our faith? Because amazing, right? God came to him and told him, your father has all of these idols that he's worshiping. God says, I want you to leave your father's household and follow me. And Abram left. And we celebrate that. But do you know, from a father's perspective, what that did to the relationship? He never saw his son again. Because his father was worshiping idols, and God was calling him beyond that. And then Abraham has kids, and there's a problem there because there's concubine. Concubine is like women on the side, if you don't know. Right, so there's concubine and Ishmael and Isaac, and then Isaac has kids, and they hate each other, and then and then you got Jacob, and Jacob has Joseph, and Joseph, his brothers want to kill him, and they throw him in a well, and then they sell him into slavery, and then you got Moses, and then on and on and on and on. There's relationship problems. We have relationship problems. We all want perfect relationships, great relationships, and we have relationship problems. So I want to suggest to you this morning that it's not a knowledge problem, because the things I'm going to share with you 3 simple things. One of them might be a little bit challenging. The others you know, right? They're not things that we don't know, but we have an execution problem. We don't do it. So here we go. There was a guy named Solomon in the Bible, King Solomon. He built the first temple in Israel to God, this monumental, amazing thing. He had everything. He was King David's son. He had everything. He was the king. Imagine. Now, I'm not going to get political with you, because that's crazy right now. But I want you to imagine this. Imagine taking Jeff Bezos. He's the guy that created Amazon. He's the richest guy in the world. He's got like $140 billion. Putting him together with Donald Trump, or if you're a Democrat, Barack Obama, right? Giving him the power that they have. And then giving him the wisdom of somebody who you think is wise. So I was going to say Einstein, but there's lots of people who are smart, but not wise. So you might make a distinction, right? But that's King Solomon. He had all the money, all the power, and all the wisdom you could ever want. He's got all of that stuff going for him, and he writes the book of Ecclesiastes. If you have some time this week, the book of Ecclesiastes is in the Old Testament. It's kind of towards the middle of the Bible. And it's King Solomon writing about how he has all the wealth, all the power, and all the wisdom in the world, and he still can't fill the void in his life that only God can fill. Here's the first principle of good relationships. You got to get your primary relationship down, and that's with God. I fall into the trap all the time. I start looking for the people around me, in particular my spouse, God bless her, to fill the void that only God can fill. We do it all the time. We try and fill the void with power. Just give me one more thing to do. Put me in charge of one more thing. Let me do one more thing. Consume all my time. Because I have this void that I'm trying to fill. We do it all the time with money. I mean, come on. How many more self-storage units are we going to build in this country to store the stuff that won't fit in our basement, attic, or garage? Because we just need more. Give me more. I'm going to fill that void with stuff. And it doesn't work. You know, we fill it with drugs. Just numb me. Numb me. And then I'm going to gather people around me who will party with me. And we'll all get numb and have these numbing relationships and talk about stuff that doesn't really matter as everything else around us crumbles. We fill it with lust. You know, what's the divorce rate in the country? It's like if you stay together as a married couple, that's the oddity. You know? We see, come on, in our schools, you have kids. You had kids, and I went to school. You know, you went to school. Trying to have sex with kids. You know, we fill it with lust. We have this void that only God can fill. The cross is a great reminder for us. There's two parts of our lives relationally. There's a horizontal one, you know, where you and me, like people, we're in relationship together. And then there's a vertical one. The vertical one's with you and God, me and God. What happens when you take the vertical relationship out? The horizontal relationship just falls to the ground. It's a wreck. The vertical crossbeam is the thing that's planted in the ground. It's planted in reality. It keeps us centered. It keeps us solid. And it's only designed for God, our Creator. He wants you and me to be in relationship with Him, not because we have to, not because like you're going to hell if you don't. He wants us to be in relationship with Him and be grounded with Him, because then it makes everything else better. It makes our horizontal relationships better. If we receive the love from God that God has for us, if we receive the grace that we can receive through Jesus Christ, if we can let go of the things that are holding us back, the faults, the sin, the garbage, if we can get in a right relationship with God, then everything else starts to work out. If God can forgive me for the stuff that I've done, maybe if I come clean with God, then maybe if I come clean with the people around me, I'll start to gain some respect. I'll start to gain some favor. I'll start to experience other people's grace and love at such a deeper level. But if I'm not in a good relationship with God, and I'm not experiencing that vertical relationship where we have that love and that forgiveness and that unconditional type of stuff, like, it makes it so much harder to have those horizontal relationships. You know, whether it's a spouse, which is huge, and that's why Paul, in Ephesians, Paul starts talking in chapter 4 about how we live a Christian life. And he spends about a chapter and a half on on why and how we live on how we live a Christian life. He spends 3 chapters on why we should live a Christian life and why we should be in a relationship with God. But then he spends a chapter and a half telling us this is how a Christian lives. Why? Not because it gets you into heaven, because it makes everything better for you. If you live this way in a Christian frame with God at the center, everything's grounded. And then he spends a little chunk of time right here on a marriage relationship. Hey, if you're doing the Christian thing, if you're grounded, if you're centered on God's relationship, then here's how it kind of starts to work out with husbands and wives. And then he spends an even littler chunk of text on this is how children should be. And again, contextually, he's in a society with slaves. So he even spends a little bit of time on how a master should treat a slave. A Christian master should treat a slave. And then he gets into the spiritual battle. But he spends the largest chunk of what he's writing this church about that vertical relationship with God because it's so important. It grounds us. So God needs to be number one. And so often we get that wrong, right? I do it. I start looking to my wife to meet the needs in my life that I have that only God can fill. And when she doesn't, guess what? You guys are so good. You're like, Pastor, I know. You just go to her and you say, oh, honey, I'm so wrong. I love you so much, and I got this backwards. I wanted you to fill that space in my life that I can only do with God. Would you get on your hands and knees with me and pray so that God can fill that void? Right? That's what the pastor does, right? It's a good thing my wife is at another church this morning. We all do it. We get testy with the people around us. We get mouthy. We dig our heels in. We let them know what we're thinking and where they're wrong. And we're sitting here today and we're just talking about it. And when you think about it in a one episode kind of way, it's cute and something that you can get over. But I've been married not as long as some of you. I've been married I don't even know, 20-some years. Don't tell my wife that either. And when it happens day in and day out and over and over and over, it's really hard to get to the point of forgiveness and grace. It's really hard. And the sad part is that it's simply because that horizontal relationship with your spouse has fallen to the ground because it has no support. It's tough. So where do you start? There's a great article by Ann Voskamp or Ann Wilson that was an opinion that was run by Fox on our website that would be great for you to read. And it's just her story 10 years into her marriage, and it was falling apart. And it took both of them to put God back at the center. And everything changed. And it's true. If you can do that, if you can humble yourself enough to get on your knees and say, God, be the center. Be my crossbeam. Be the support for my crossbeam. You're my primary relationship. Forgive me that you haven't been. Everything starts to work. You can trust me on it, or you can try it. So on page 2 in your bulletin, I laid out just the 3 points for you so that you can remember. The first one, I spent the most time on it this morning because it's the absolute most important. And we'll look a little bit more in depth at the next two in the next couple weeks. Next week. But, I said, these things we know. We know that God needs to be the centerpiece. God is our number one. Our spouse is our number two. God is our number one. All the other relationships rest on that center relationship, that primary relationship. The second thing is love. We just spent a whole bunch of time, 4 weeks, looking at love. Love is patient. Love is kind. It's not envious. It doesn't, it's all laid out right there for you. It's not envious. It's gentle. It's truthful. And again, these are things we know, but they're hard to execute. Last night I was focusing on a stupid little project. I had one kid who wanted me to figure out this thing on the computer that he wanted, and then I got Claire, so I have a 13-year-old who wanted me to figure out something on the computer. I got an 8-year-old who's hovering around me at like 9 at night because she's getting ready for bed. She's tired. She's antsy. She just wants my attention. And I love her to death, but I didn't have any patience. And I wasn't the kindest person. It was challenging. We're people. We get into those situations. We know it. It's tough to execute it. Be patient. Be kind. Try your hardest. So, and then last, I think this is also, this is groundbreaking, but it's something we all know. Respect your relationships. Respect your spouse. Like, can you say to your spouse and to the people around you, I love my wife. My wife is the greatest. I love my husband. He's the greatest. Respect, respect, respect. Put a high premium on that. So anyway, here's the take home for you. Very, very simple, and then we'll close out with the song and go home. This is what I want you to do. This week, if you want to come back next week smiling, with like joy, like never before, you just do this. Trust me, you got to do it. You got to do it. You got to do it. It's the 5-1 rule. I made it simpler for you. Normally it's a 10-1 rule, but we just want 5-1, right? Say 5 nice things, encouraging things, loving things to the person you're married to, or your kids, or your coworkers, whoever you're in a relationship with. 5 nice things to 1 negative thing. Now, if you're honest, maybe you're all better than I am. But if I'm honest with myself, I'm absolutely the other way. I got 5 things that you need to fix, and oh, you're wonderful. Yeah, just 5, right? That's what it was 10-1, Anyway, if you can flip that, if I can flip that, and I can tell Denise 5 things a day that I love about her, that she does well, that I appreciate, and I keep my stupid negativity to 1, I'll be a changed man next Sunday. So if you can't do it, you got to at least come back and see me. Try it. 5 good things. Only 1 negative thing. How many? 5. To 1 negative thing. And you will come back next week. You'll bring your friends. You'll be smiling. Everything will be great.